For some dumb reason, they're trying to expand the NCAA tournament. Yeah, Chris, I just went right into it. 72, 76. Let's go 196. There's like 300 plus teams. You still couldn't add enough teams and get to 50% of the country playing in the tournament. It would be a ridiculous amount of teams before you even allowed 50% of the teams in the tournament. But let's go back to you used to really have to earn your way into the tournament back in the John Wooden days, right? You had to win your conference. Now everybody is pretty much eligible from the start of your season. 95, I'm probably way off on that, percent of teams make their conference tournaments because conference tournaments are now with super conferences cutting off 2 teams in the 20-team conference for the most part. So everybody has a chance to play in, go on a Cinderella run, make it to the NCAA tournament. And then you got the likes of the mediocre North Carolinas on the heel of 1 win at UCLA's expense last year. And, who was the tournament selection committee chair? Their AD, right? And then they make it. Now, we've seen that work in UCLA's favor. That's where the Blue Bloods, the big brands, 21, UCLA, rough end of the year, they get to the Final Four anyway. We saw that when I believe they played St. Bonaventure, right, Chris? And they lost in the first 4. And it wasn't. Yeah. It would have been more embarrassing to watch them play in that game versus just send them home. Don't even send them to Dayton. What is your thought about tournament expansion? And why are we trying to do with something so sacred?
Well, Zach, it kind of boils down to just the overall pulse of where we're at in college athletics right now. Anything that was sacred before is no longer sacred. So they've ripped apart everything we love. It started with conference realignment, traditional rivalries, geographical rivalries. Cal and Stanford in the ACC now. We're in the Big Ten. So it's the new reality that college sports is now a national thing, and brands and brand cachet, teams, schools, colleges, that's what matters, right? Because now you got to pay dudes and young ladies. So now that you have to pay people, the NCAA is obviously going to try to be more open to exploring avenues in which they can generate more revenue. And the lens in which I view this conference NCAA expansion situation, it's through that lens. They're trying to make obviously more money. There's going to be more units to be paid out. There's more teams. There's going to be more eyeballs. They're trying to, the viewership, whatever, the TV deals, all of it's going to be involved. I'm not an expert on this type of stuff, so I'm more the basketball side, but I do have an understanding of why the NCAA would do this. To the point about, we were talking offline, and UCLA, North Carolina, Kentucky, all these people will now be guaranteed to make the tournament. Well, I'll ask you this: does it make what do you like seeing upsets more than blue bloods going all the way to the final game? Do you prefer an upset, or do you like blue bloods being deep in the tournament? So if you got the Sweet 16, you got 8 blue bloods in the Sweet 16, or do you want George Mason and Butler, or do you want Carolina, Duke? I'm asking you that.
I would say, well, the thing about that Butler team is obviously Gordon Hayward went on to be an NBA player, so that's an interesting one.
Not Butler.
I get you. I would say I love the upset. But the thing is, we could still get the upsets and the blue bloods. We could have a world in the tournament. There's so many teams. You can get both. You can have a Sweet 16 with Cinderellas, 4 of them. Right. You have some blue bloods, and you still get 78 teams as blue bloods, which I think would be, you get the underdog, and then that's, I think, the ideal tournament. That's the ideal. You get Cinderella, Sweet 16, Elite 8, facing some big team like St. Peter's, right? That's why it hurt for UCLA right before they could get to St. Peter's. But then you see St. Peter's in the Elite 8, and you're like, if you win the Sweet 16 game, you're in the Final Four. That's kind of the thought as it keeps going on.
Yes.
I don't want blue bloods, every single one. I don't want chalk. I want upsets. Now, can we have 5 crazy double-digit seeds to the Elite 8? That would be a little crazy. I love chaos. Not everybody is for that. I've seen everybody. The quality of the tournament in basketball is so much better, but it's a debate for everybody.
But Zach, here's the thing. I think that we have to view this through the proper lens, right? Because now NIL effectively is going to cause the Cinderella and that tournament run to be extinct, because how can they compete salary cap wise? How can St. Peter's now match with a Power 6 school on a salary cap, which means their players are going to be substantial. Look, I'm not saying it's not possible. This still is the game of basketball. And before salary caps, shoot, UCLA 96 lost to Princeton in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So make no mistake about it. I'm not saying that this stuff isn't possible, but the likelihood of things happening when you expand a conference tournament to 76 teams now, and you're allowing, or you're giving bids, or however that's going to work with certain universities that have big time brands, and the UCLAs and the North Carolinas, what does that mean for the mid to low major? Now, I'm trying to figure it out. When they say expansion, what does that mean? So it's teams, who's being expanded, who's taking up those extra bids year in, year out. Like, we got to get to the nitty gritty, because I really think this move is it's sort of like, listen, when you see these kind of upstart tournaments that UCLA women's basketball is playing in this thing called the Players Era Tournament, where there's like $1 million prize, right? They're playing Texas, and then they got to play Duke or South Carolina. Made for TV matchups more frequently in the tournament. I think that's going to be the move moving forward. I don't have a rhyme or reason, but if I know what I know about the NCAA, they're about their bread. They're about their bottom line, their money. So if they have an opportunity to make, a couple billion on this, they're going to do it.
And the funny thing is, we've seen they're going to mess probably with the NCAA tournament, and inevitably, whether we like it or not, they will probably expand it, maybe, unless they get really pushed off of it. And that's going to lead to 4 to 8 more teams. And I think realistically, I can confidently say UCLA, any other blue bloods, if they're decently mediocre, like North Carolina was, sure, you will always be in the conversation. So that's a good thing if you want to see UCLA in the tournament, maybe go on a run. But I think it also leads sometimes to an embarrassing first 4, first 8 game, like we saw a few years ago when they played St. Bonaventure. I'd rather avoid that. I'd rather take you should be embarrassed to miss the tournament and not be a mediocre team that plays in the first 4. All right,
I'm with you on that. I'm not. I wasn't big on the first 4. I wasn't big on accepting that bid or whatever it was. I wasn't rolling with that.
But they made it to a Final Four, and they're a half-court heave away from playing in a national championship game. So, but those are few and far between, and that's the case. And we started to see that. We talk about made-for-TV events. They don't even play home and homes anymore. UCLA is going home and home with ASU instead of Arizona. And now that's more a UCLA thing. Some other schools are doing things, but they're going to go play in a neutral site arena.
More people. I mean, it's Zach. I retweeted an article today about how the University of Tennessee is like changing up their season ticket priority situation to where the people that have given the most money over the last 20, 30 years or whatever, they get first priority. Arkansas did the same thing. UCLA has language in that Arizona and Gonzaga release that alludes to that. I missed it the first time, but I read it and I'm like, oh, because I didn't understand it because UCLA said, hey, season ticket holders or whatever they're called, VIP, Wooden Fund, etc.
Wooden Athletic Funds.
Yeah, get priority. And I was just like, dang, I've never seen this before. But listen, so everybody's moving towards the paid model. Okay. The freemium model and that's the schools too, because they now have to pay people. When you have to have salary cap and you got to come up with funds so that you have the strongest roster that you can possibly have to compete for a championship, to make the tournament so that you can go far, so you can receive these units, because it's about these units. Being good in college, going far in the tournament, it's about the units. Like, you can look up the units and who's won what, who made the most money over the last 20 years in college basketball. It's probably like Duke and Kentucky and them type of guys, because they Sweet 16s every year. They Elite 8. They always in the mix. I would love for UCLA to be back in that mix. UCLA, we need to have a revenue stream that really helps fund the elite of the elite, so that we can stay competitive on a high level.